We did it again, we the hardest around. Took an old shoe and turned it into a crown. Fresher than ever, we never bringing you trash. And every time we do work, we at the head of our class. You know the name. So long souls. So long souls.
Soul on Souls, yeah. What's up, y'all? This your boy James. I'm back with Soul on Souls. We're gonna get into it today. We're going to take these 72 and 10s. They still in great condition. They got a little dirt on the bottom, but they still in great condition. We're gonna take these and we're gonna dye the bottoms. We're gonna dye them like a blue or royal blue, and then we're gonna paint this Jumpman. And then I think we may paint the tips. I don't know. We'll see how it looks afterwards. But first thing we're gonna do is clean these bottoms. Because if you're gonna dye something, you wanna make sure that it's cleaned properly. You don't wanna dye over dirt. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. Clean in between this area, clean theirs. Take some acetone and a cotton round after you wash this bottom part and get this part off. You wanna make sure as much as possible that the bottom is clear and free of debris. So that's what we're gonna do first. I'm gonna clean them off camera, and then I'm gonna take that acetone and cotton round and clean it as well. And then we're gonna get into dyeing them. So what I will say as far as dyeing your soles, I've discussed this before. You wanna use, if you're gonna use a paintbrush, you wanna use a small paintbrush first. So, something like this. Something like that, that type of length or width or whatever. And what you want to do is, with this small paintbrush, just come around the edges like that. Just come around the edges ever so slightly, edge all the way around, and then you'll take a bigger paintbrush and you'll go to the rest of the shoe. But the reason why you're doing that is so that you're not gonna leak this dye, because you're painting with dye. Dye spreads. So if you mess up, dye's gonna get on that white part and you ain't gonna be able to get it out. So keep that in mind. Use a small paintbrush to go around the edges ever so slightly first, and then you can use a bigger paintbrush, but don't glob your dye on there. You know, only a little bit of dye. As you take your paintbrush out of the dye, rub it against the top so it takes the excess dye off. You only want a little bit of dye on your paintbrush and go along the edges first. That's it. Then take a bigger paintbrush and go with everything else. But let me go ahead and clean that, and then we'll be right back to dye. All right, so the shoes are clean. A step that I forgot to tell y'all, or I should mention up front, is I use Salon Care 40 to unyellow my soles. You can get it at Sally's Beauty Supply or wherever. It's called Salon Care 40. It's the most popular. You can use Ice Cream by Raleigh Restorations, and you can use So Bright by Angela. So whatever unyellowing concoction you want, you can use that. But whatever you use 50% of it. That's a little more than 50%. Let me pour a little bit of this back. You want to use a 50-50 ratio. So I'm going to use 50% of my unyellowing cream and then 50% dye. I'm going to use this Angela's blue dye. Be careful how you pour your dye. I wouldn't even say 50%. I say 70-30 to be honest. Be careful how you pour it, because if it spills, it's gonna stain. I'm gonna show y'all a stain on my floor that I spilled and I couldn't get it up. I tried to clean it as soon as I spilled it and it still didn't come up. Let me use this paintbrush. See if y'all can still see it. Right there. You see that green spot right there? I spilled some dye right there, and I tried to get it up as soon as I spilled it, and it won't come up. All right, so be careful with your dye. When you're mixing it, if it spills out of the little container, you're doomed. Wherever that just went, it's gonna stay there. Alright, so I'm mixing mine up. It should be a slight paste. It should just be thicker than what it was coming out of the bottle. So it'll be easier to lay on the shoe, but be careful because it stains. That's the color it's gonna be. It's gonna be like a bluish purple. So let's get the paint. Alright, so this is what I was talking about. You want to take that paintbrush, that's the small paintbrush, and just go along the top edges and just paint that. Leave the bottom. You'll get to that later. Like that. Leave the bottom. You'll get to that later. But you want to go ahead and hit the top ever so slightly. Remember, guys, if you paint this and you get some on this white, it's not coming off. Take your time and use as small a paintbrush as possible. Don't rush. I can't emphasize that enough. People told me not to, get it on the white part, but they didn't emphasize that. Don't rush. Take your time. Go really, really, really slow. It's not a race. Take your time. Paint the edge first. Take this brush and let's say this is the edge right here. Don't go up and down like this. Go along the edges just like this. Slowly back and forth. Just like that. Get those edges. Slowly, just like that. That's what you want to do. And then, after you got the edges, you can come down and paint the rest of the sole. But start at the edge first so that you don't get any on the white part. Be really careful around that white part. So I'm gonna let this dry for probably about an hour. And then I'm gonna take acetone and a cotton ball and rub it across and get that excess dye off. And then I'm gonna paint it again. I'm gonna dye it again. And once I dye it again, I'm gonna take that cotton round and acetone and get the excess off again. And then that's it. And then I'll paint the bottom. Customers, just to be 100% honest, customers really aren't worried about the bottom. They're worried about the part that they can see when they're walking. So you want to keep that in mind. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to paint this Jumpman the same color as that blue. This is going to be a nice customer. I think I'm going to like this. This will be something that's really quick, really simple for the 72 and 10 custom. With the 72 and 10, you don't want to do too much to it. You want to just do it so it stands out. When somebody sees you with a pair of these, they're going to be like, yo, where you get those from? You know what I mean? You don't want to just paint all over them and stuff. Just paint this, paint the sole, paint that Jumpman, put the same laces back in. That's it.
Ooh, wow, guys, look at that blue. Look how it's laid down. That's awesome. That's dye, guys. For everybody just tuning in, that's dye, that's not paint. Yo, that's nice. So I mixed up some blue and some purple. Look how that goes with that. Just a little blue, a little purple. I'm gonna paint the Jumpman. The first thing I did on the Jumpman, I sprayed some adhesion promoter that I talk about a lot. It helps that paint stick. So it's an optional thing, but to me it's mandatory. Spray that, let it dry for a couple seconds or a minute or so, and then paint the Jumpman. That's what we're gonna do. But look at that shot of that blue. Ooh, I'm gonna call these the 72 and 10 Royals.
Did it again, we the hardest around. Took an old shoe and turned it into a crown. Fresher than ever, we never bringing you trash. And every time we do work, we at the head of our class. You know the name. So long souls. So long souls.